Hey everybody, I'm Dave with Growing the Home Garden. Today I am starting my peppers and tomato plants. And I'm going to do it a little bit different. Usually I will use like a plastic cup with a clear plastic lid over top of it and put in about 5 or 10 seeds in each one, and then I will transplant those individually. And that works great. I love that method. I'll go back to that eventually. But due to space issues and the fact that we're going to be working on a move, I don't want to have a huge amount of plants that I'm going to have to deal with. So I'm going to be a little bit more concise with it, and instead I'm going to use a flat. Here, I'll show you. This clear plastic lid over top of a 1020 flat. And this is something I did a while back when I was selling plants at farmers markets. Is I had this one tray that actually had 3 trays like this, where I labeled using a paint pen on the bottom of each with a row and the I guess column and row, however you want to look at it, with an A on one side and then a number on the other side. And so I would put it down on a piece of paper and grid out what I'd actually planted. Now, most likely I'll probably grid these or plant these out in groups of 2 or 3. So like those 3 will be the same, these 4 might be the same, these 3 might be the same. That way I can kind of keep everything all nice and organized and not have too many lines that I have to write down on a piece of paper. But you never know. You may end up with one off that you have to do differently. Maybe it's a perennial, or maybe you ended up with one extra space somewhere and you want to plant something else into it, and that gives you the opportunity to do it. The problem with doing like labels and sticking in a label into each little area here is that when you put this plastic lid over top of it, you don't have much height inside. So I found that if I do a nice kind of list that kind of coordinates with each cell in this flat, I can keep better organized and I don't have to worry about doing an individual label for every one. So for this, you can see I'm using a seed starting mix. This is from Jiffy Peat. It's an organic seed starting mix. It's got peat moss, coir, and vermiculite in there to create nice drainage for it. It's a fairly neutral mix and it's pretty common. I think I got this one at our local box store, so you can go do that from there or order it through Amazon, whatever you want to do. But this will need to absorb water first before I even plant. So that is kind of the next step, is to pour water into this and let this get a little bit of moisture first before I start putting in seeds, because peat does tend to expand and this could actually grow beyond the holes just a little bit. I may have too much in here, but if I do, I can just kind of scrape it off and then I'll put it in an adjoining flat over here to do for something else later. So you can see there it's kind of resisting the water just a little bit, so I give it a little bit of a drink and then let it absorb what it can, and then I'll come back and water it a little bit more. Each one of these cells has drainage holes in the bottom, and the bottom flat that I actually have these in is solid and does not have any drainage holes in it. That way when I have it in the house, it's not going to make a big mess every which way. And here they get plenty of drainage for everything. So if I water one flat too much, or one part of the flat too much, it will all go down and it will be like it's a reservoir of water for all of them to wick the water up into their cells. So it kind of evens things out over across the flat. That creates kind of a good situation where you could bottom water if you wanted to take these out. I've done it before where I've left one cell completely open and then I just pour my water in here, and then it kind of evens out throughout the entire flat. So there's different ways you can water your plants. And it just is a good way to do it, especially when you have something that's hydrophobic like this peat. It just resists the absorption of water for a little while. It takes time, but it will soon be nice and moist, and all this water will be absorbed into the rest of the flat. Okay, so you can see here that these cells here are nice and wet. They're damp. Down below there's a little bit of moisture down there. I can add some more if I need it, but that water is just going to wick up right through here and keep the seeds nice and wet. So next I'm going to go through what seeds am I actually going to plant. Probably one of my biggest issues is actually paring down the list of plants I want to plant, because a lot of times it's just there's too many great choices out there, too many cool options that we can do. But what I've got here is my minimal list for this year. There's a couple plants in there I do every single year, and then there's a few others here that I like to just try every now and then. So here's what we've got. So I'm going to start off with paprika. These are a type of pepper. They're a little bit spicy, but they are what they use ground paprika to make, or what they make ground paprika out of. Another one is brown jalapeno, and brown jalapeno is very good for stuffing jalapeno pepper. So if you like making jalapeno poppers or things like that, this is a good one. It's not extremely spicy either. So if you pick it early, it's a little more mild, and people who have issues with perhaps too much spice will be fine with that. And these here, I put OP on top of them because these came from my garden in the previous year. I think these are around 2020, 2021, sometime around there. Another jalapeno, Craig's Grand, do that one. Cuadrado de Este Rosso, a nice blocky red pepper. That's a sweet bell pepper. Tomatillos. This is San Juanito. That's about a 3-ounce tomatillo. And then here's another one called Rio Grande Verde. And these were, one of these two, I don't remember which one, was in the tomatillo video I did a while back, a couple years ago. This tomato I thought I'd try. It's kind of a striped tomato, pink vernissage. Kellogg's Breakfast. That's a classic. And then just Amish paste. Got to have some sort of tomato paste type tomatoes. San Marzanos are good for that as well. Sun Golds, I grow those about every year because we like a nice cherry tomato that we're really kind of partial to the orange tomatoes too. And hadn't done this one in a while, so I thought I'd do it. It's blueberries. They have a chemical in it that actually it's called anthocyanins, and they help it to turn blue. And those are the same things that are in blueberries, so they're kind of good for you that way. We've got Whittle Orange. This is one that I plant every single year. They are delicious slicing tomatoes, orange, very mild, not a lot of acidity to it, just really good. Rutgers, that's a classic. And Paul Robeson, that's another good slicing tomato, very tasty. Any of these tomatoes, all I'm going to do is I'm going to make a little impression into each one of these spots, put probably 2 tomato seeds or so in each one. If for some reason one tomato doesn't work out, I'd like there to be a second one there so I don't waste the cell in this flat. And the other thing about it is, if I do get more than one in there, I can always separate them and put them into their own pots and then maybe give them away, or maybe plant more tomatoes in the garden. So we'll start off with the peppers, and these are paprika right here, open pollinated from our own garden. And all I'm going to do is put a couple little peppers into each little spot here, just like that. Looks like I got an extra one. It's a little hard to do when you're holding the camera. I'm going to scoot around like that and just kind of tuck them in real good so that they're covered. And I guess we'll go that way with them. So I was going to do 2. If you get 3 in, not a big deal. Just like that. And I'll just continue that process all the way through. I'll probably do them in pairs to get enough in there to cover this whole entire flat. And I should have about 50 plants coming out of this at least. Could be up to 100. As I'm planting them, I'm filling them in on my chart here, and eventually you'll see this entire chart filled up with everything that I've got planted. So here's the flat with all the seeds planted in it, and I ended up coming back and sprinkling more of the seed sowing mix on top of this just so that I could get good coverage over top of it without having to punch down each individual seed. It just worked a lot better for it, especially when you got small seeds like the tomatillo seeds, which are somewhere around in here. What I'll do next is I'll just give it a light spritz with some water from a little sprayer thing, and then I'll let it sit. And in 7 to 14 days or so, we should have some germination. I'm going to keep these in the house where it's nice and warm. I'm not using the heat mats right now because the garage still gets pretty cold. I'm going to bring this inside, and I figure that's probably going to be better to ensure I get good germination right now. All right, so now I got my tomatoes and peppers all started. The next step is just wait for them to germinate. Once they've germinated and grown their set of true leaves, I can go ahead and start picking them out and then potting them up individually. Once I pot them up individually, there'll be a process of upsizing where you go from one and then put it into a larger pot so it can grow on and become a bigger plant before you put it in the garden. The more mature it can get before you actually stick it in the garden, the better. Anyway, I'm Dave from Growing the Home Garden. Thanks for watching. Hit the like button, subscribe, and we'll catch you next time.